gentlemen, welcome to another episode of APT's House of Commons. I'm LD Demola. To my left is
Oscar Atuma, House of Commons.
Ike Ono, House of Commons.
And you're Suji, House of Commons.
House of Commons. Cheers, everyone.
Leo, one glass.
Just like today's episode is pretty broad, but we're going to try to focus it in. Africans versus African Americans, the split. So, we're all Africans sitting here, Los Angeles, California, United States of America, and there seems to be a discrepancy between Africans and African Americans.
Well,
From my experience, right, I'm gonna just touch on it and then go around. But from my experience, going through high school in the United States of America, Los Angeles, California, I was the African kid and had more non-African American friends than I did have African American friends, and that was not by my choosing. It was just because, right? It was just because it seemed like they just did not like me. Now I've grown up, that's changed, but that was my experience then. What do you guys think? You think it's real? Do you think there's a split between Africans and Americans and Africans? Also, African Americans say that we think we're better than. There's so many different things you can touch on, but I can see you are ready to say something, so I'm start with you.
well. I mean, I went to high school out here, so, I'll start by this. A lot of people ask me, they say, how did you get into comedy? How did you become, what made you want to be funny and stuff like that? Because when I was younger, I was playful, but also an introvert. And when I got to high school, I'm sorry, but they were all my friends. They were all my friends. I love them all. But my African American friends, when I say they dealt with me for a good 4 years, maybe 6, including junior high school and high school, all the way up until graduation, it was jokes upon jokes upon jokes. So I'll be, because of the accent. It had nothing to do with my accent. There was a time when I had come back from Nigeria, I had a little bit of an accent, but just by being African, once they heard that I was African, that was it.
Interesting.
So I'll be fighting, not literally fighting, but cracking jokes on 3 or 4 people at the same time. So there'll be 3 people trying to crack jokes with me at the same time. So I'm trying to joke this person want to chime in, and another thing. But it was so easy to target the African.
Yeah, so we know why I asked because you don't have an accent like an African. That's what is it about it? They just fun because they knew where you were from.
Times have changed, so maybe this generation is not feeling it how maybe me and LD generation feels it, but I felt it. In the early 2000s, late 90s, it was not cool at all.
Can I go next? This is my own experience.
I mean, and I don't want to say it was just like, this is the beginning of what I have to say. There's so much more to say.
Yeah. One nickname that they gave you, just any nickname.
Nabuka. African Booty Scratcher. That was a classic one.
Nice
There's so much more. I don't go to high school yet, so I guess I didn't face all those nicknames and name calling and stuff. But my experience, I came to America at a kind of a great age after college. I had gone to college in Nigeria and I came here. But my first job was working at McDonald's. Imagine me working at McDonald's. I was at college age. All right. So my supervisors and people, it was a big culture change for me because I had 16, 17-year-old telling me what I need you to go take out that trash. So I was like, well, okay, good. But after a couple of years, I went to the college here. I got a degree in nuclear medicine and I started working as a technologist. Guess what happened when I drove by a McDonald's? I went through a drive-through, and the guy that was taking my order was my supervisor when I came here. So when he saw me, he was like this: "You got a foreigner? What are you doing? Did you rob a bank? Did you sell drugs?" So still the supervisor at McDonald's. So you see how the hatred started at that time. He was like, okay, already saying that I robbed about.
Okay.
Do I have to rob a bank to drive a foreigner?
Okay. So here's my question to kind of piggyback on what you said. Because you just made a statement that is broad as well. Because some African Americans' perspective is that Africans think we are better than them.
Right.
Right? You just said at McDonald's as if McDonald's is love, which in our culture it is love. Right? In our culture culture, you don't say,
In America, it's low too.
but in our culture, it's even lower.
Can do.
But there are some people, based on their statistics and the potential they have, that's the highest they can reach
Right.
in America, right?
Yeah.
So do you think
Based on the educational.
based on their education, based on their growth, that is the highest they can reach? I'm not saying all Africa, that's the case for most Africa, I'm not saying that at all, but chances are that is the highest a lot of people in certain social classes
Well, I guess that was the highest my supervisor reached because he was still a supervisor.
do you think that makes them have a point that we do think we're better than them?
Well, I think
No,
that being
no.
inferior is the point.
Can I be very honest?
No,
Let's be real. Can I be very honest?
Okay,
Okay.
go ahead.
First of all, I don't think that I'm better than anyone, but how I was raised, that was kind of the sentiment that was given to me. You know, I hate to put my parents out like that, but the truth is, this is your culture. Let me just give some statistics so before I go inside. Statistics say that Nigerians, as of 2006, are the most educated in the U.S. Period, above Asians, above any other group.
It's not a lie.
That is statistics. That's what they say. It's just Nigerians. I'm not getting into guys.
Yeah, you just college just because you're Nigerian.
Just look at Nigeria.
It's not a lie. It's true.
And they just trust you're gonna do your thing.
If you have a Nigerian last name, you get different packages. I'm not like, oh yeah.
So with that being said, it's a culture thing for us. So there's an expectation. There wasn't, are you going to college? Just when you go to college.
When are you done with
When are you done with college? College is high school for us, or for me. And there was no like, oh, that you're so what no, you're gonna go.
So does that mean yes?
Okay.
So there's a cultural difference there. My parents had a different expectation. Some of the people that I went to school with, not all of them, had different expectations for themselves, and it wasn't a general consensus for everyone. So some people, it doesn't mean that African Americans are educated. There's a lot of educated African Americans out there, everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So it's not about that Nigerians or Africans are more educated. It's just that there's a certain standard that we live by culturally that our parents we cannot break from that standard.
Okay, see, from my own experience, I didn't go to high school, university, I went back to school here. When I went to school, that's when I found out that there was a problem. But the problem is divided.
Right.
There are some African Americans, once they see you, they like you, they see you as their own brother from mother.
Oh yeah.
Then right on the spot, they will like you, they're willing to give you any help necessary that you need. There are some African Americans, once you open up, they might like you just from looking at you. Once you open up your mouth and they realize you're African, that's it. I give you an example. This one is funny. Some of them are so rude and arrogant with the hatred that they don't understand when you're the boss and when they're an employee. Right. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, I give you some emotional things, right? When we cast, there are some African Americans, once they get to our set, and the rest of the Africans, they fall in love with us. Like, they give us everything. I will mention somebody said, example, Lee Woodfield. When we were working with Lee, we had to go through all this stuff, limo, all that, limo pickup, all that, we agreed on a contract. But the day Lee got our set, I realized that we're Africans. You know what she said? She said, my brother and I, he said, come, see the limo, all that, please, thank you much. I'm just happy. Yeah, I'm real, this is real. I'm just happy that some African brothers came to Hollywood. Finally, we saved their money and is doing production at this level. It's with our movie program. Right there and then, all the things that we signed, her food will be delivered this time, she said, that's other problems. She's African American, right? She came, she saw that we're Africans, and she just loved us and then walked with us as like brothers. Right. Now, on that same set, there was some group, I'm not going to mention them, that got there, immediately, it's not too, right? Immediately, she found out that we are Africans. I was like, motherfuckers, who are these idiots? And if they don't know, we know, because that once you like us, my brother will look at me and say, this one like us. Once you don't like us, my brother will look at me and say, this one don't like us. So if you realize that if you notice that you like us, we'll get close to you.
Okay.
And we'll become friends with you. But if you notice that you don't like us, we treat you
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Okay. Can I ask everyone a question?
Yes.
So, from my experience, it seems like there's a lot of there's tension between African Americans and America as a whole.
Some African Americans.
No. As a whole, the history of African Americans in America, right, does not really work in the favor of African Americans.
Can I ask you a quick question? In the midst of that,
Okay.
what do when not all, when you tell an African American, now times have changed. Now we're now getting 2015 is now. As African American, are you African? Oh hell no, I ain't African.
They're not wrong though.
They're not wrong.
They're not wrong. No, are they right?
Because but it's just the reaction.
Okay.
Sure. Now, and I could be a little sensitive because of how I
Okay. Hold up. Here's what.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and answer that
Okay.
question. So, the history of African Americans in America does not necessarily work in their favor based on everything that was logged. As you see all the movies, 12 Years a Slave, it's a constant reminder that, hey, African Americans, this is your story in America. When I was in Nigeria, I did not know of the African American story until I got to America and found out,
That's true.
right? I did not know anything about slavery. All I knew was we were all given king's names when we were born. Every one of us has an African name that has something to do with royalty, right? You're not competing against any white man's code. You are competing against your father. You're going to be better than what you met when you came to this how you were raised, right? But I noticed in America, the African American story is kind of, there's been so much reminders that this is your story.
That's the one that's been accepted. That's the one that's been given. So
do you think we have to take some kind of responsibility in reminding our African American brothers and sisters that the stories that you might be reading in America might just be holding you back?
I don't think we have to take any responsibility at all to do anything like that. You know, it's sad that that's the way it is. But like he just mentioned an example that he's dealt with the same African Americans, and some of them choose to act
Automatically
differently. So he didn't have to educate those ones to act nice. No, I think every individual should take it upon themselves to educate themselves, take it upon themselves to take responsibility, because you choose what you decide or ultimately become in life. So I can choose to educate you from now to kingdom come. If you choose not to accept what I'm telling you or be affected by it, nothing
Hold
will
on.
happen.
Okay. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. But we can say you choose to become what you want in life. That is true to a certain point. I will say this. The fact that we were pressured to get an education works to our advantage because it broadened our horizons.
So
Right?
you don't say it was, but sometimes you say it's not.
Of course, sometimes it's disadvantage, but for the most part, we were given,
sense.
at least we're given discipline to, you must complete this, right? And we have that part of our mind exercised. There are people in this world
Society.
that are not even fortunate enough to know their potential, right? And if you look at
There's nobody there to
exactly, if you look at African American history, with the constant reminders of this is your history,
Yeah, exactly.
that is more common than our story of when you go to school. So I can't say you choose what you can become because a lot of them don't have things like that.
Let me piggyback on what he said. When I was at Davis, right? I had one of my friends. He would.
Where's Davis?
UC Davis.
Oh,
UC Davis.
You just said Davis. Okay,
Davis, I'm sorry.
Davis.
UC Davis.
I go to school here. So
Yeah. So there's a guy that he would talk about how I want to do this, but black folks don't do that. Black folks normally aren't able to get into this door, and what I realized, I don't want to say a slave mentality, but the mentality was, there was a very limited.
He's already calling himself
Yeah,
a shop.
already. It's not everybody.
true.
It's not everyone.
And it's not just African American.
Directly is from our story that's been given, force-fed to him from childhood. The half of slavery that was given to us instead of our history that came before that, and then what came after that. Because all we know is what we've been
Oh,
talking
that's
about.
sorry to cut you off.
Let's ask him what he said. But you see how you said your African American friend, so they call himself Sharp.
Mhm.
A lot of Africans know too.
Yeah.
And because I know someone, I'm not going to mention them. You know, one day we're arguing, said to Scout, the reason why you're here in Hollywood, thinking you're all that bullshit and doing all these movies is because she went to Sunday school and my parents didn't send me. That's what I'm saying. So automatically, and he said, you know, I attended government college of Wyoming. The government college of Wyoming is one of the top high schools from where we came from. But that person attended another school, I shunned them so that they don't think I'm entering the school. But already, he already used his own hand to feel inferior and to call
Inferiority
to call himself down.
Yeah.
And after he said it, he kind of bothered me a little. So I one day I called him and said, I understand what you're saying. I'm not blaming on your parents. Your parents, they sent you to school, thank them for sending you to school. Some people didn't have people to send them to school in the first place. But now, don't ever limit yourself because of the school you attended. We are not in America.
That's about it.
See, one good thing I love about what we're doing right now, I believe, everybody watching, people watching this from wherever along the world, will get something out of it because one, you can always sit back and point finger and blame everybody else for because I went to a public school, back home in Nigeria. I went to Jalapon Day School.
No! Yo, cheers to
So,
this guy.
you know what Jalapon
They said Jalapon Day representative.
I didn't go to government school. My brothers did.
Do you guys know what Jalapon Day is?
My sisters did, the older ones. But I didn't go. I went to public school, but I could have, become given a school.
You can use that as an excuse.
Exactly, and become business. Exactly. I guess that's what in America. I think the society definitely suppresses the African Americans. The society is made that way.
The system
The
is
system.
but you can break it.
But exactly.
Now, can I add something? Now, I had another friend whose mother, would sit there and say, she didn't have a father in his life. His mother would sit there and say, you're handsome, you're educated, you can do whatever you want to be. You can go to the moon. Put that in his mind. It doesn't matter where you come. Where you are right now is not the end. The end is where the end is. You ain't there yet. You can be bigger than where you are right now.
Right.
So if somebody's not telling you these kind of things when you're young, that's a problem.
But
My mom told me these things.
Okay, let me just remind you something.
2 years old.
We both went to high school here. You mentioned something earlier. In America, the story of Black people or it's not African American studies, it's more slavery education.
Yeah.
Because when you look at from chapter 1 to chapter 100, 89 of them is stories of oppression.
Yeah.
You get a sprint of I have a dream, or we revolted and we overcame.
If you study, it depends.
For the most part, before you get into college, everything is
College, yes.
the development stages of your life in America.
Yeah.
African stories, African American stories, just slavery.
So you're saying
Yeah.
it's a disadvantage to African Americans.
If I keep telling you that your story is nothing but negative, you can't even.
Let me add, it's not just that it's negative. It's not even enough of the story.
Exactly.
It's like half of a chapter.
I see what you mean. Okay. The sides of that story, the triumphant side, the Africans that invented, the slaves that invented peanut butter. They don't develop by the slave.
They don't tell you nothing.
Don't tell you the part. Okay, that's bad. That's sad.
You know the problem I have, right? I have the problem of people just seeing you and just because you're African to hate you. True.
That's a whole lot.
That's number two.
What do you think? Can I ask you a question? What do you think that comes from, though?
Okay, do you know where it comes from? It comes from anger inside. It comes from them knowing that. I give you an example. I just dealt with someone last week who's supposed to be a superstar in America.
Mm-hmm.
So when he met me, then someone brought him to me to introduce me to him. This guy, right? All of a sudden, we're talking. He wouldn't let me sit there. Right?
No.
Yeah, he's thinking he's no me wrong. Then I asked him a question. I said, okay, bro, you say you've been in Hollywood for that. Something you haven't even decided to produce.
It was quiet.
Yeah, he said, oh, no, I'm working with these people.
Right.
You know, we're trying to do this movie. I said, bro, I've produced 10.
Okay,
He said, you know what he said? He said, wow. Those 10 movies. I said,
Can I play devil's advocate real quick?
Let me finish.
Okay.
Immediately I said that he wants me to speak, but then he already called me off.
Yeah.
He's not the kind of worker I want to deal with.
I just want to
He thinks because he's African American, he's smarter than me.
Yeah. You have an accent.
I need help from him. Other than that, I can't use the language mother sucker. I'm gonna go like man say, you need me. I need you.
And I think one thing that I'm really trying to be very, very aware of is it's problematic for us as Africans to ever judge African Americans. We are not.
we do that a lot.
We do it a lot, and it's not good at all.
Yeah.
I don't do it because I grew up out here, and I live in Nigeria too, but I'm more American than I'm Nigerian. Much as I know about African culture, I know a lot, but I'm still American, so I understand both experiences a lot more.
So you are African American, that's what I'm saying.
Can I say something though? I think it is our responsibility as Africans to try to remind our African American brothers that your story is not what's in the book. You know,
My thing is,
let's be honest. The reason why I say that is this, right? As I've matured, I was also born in the United States of America, but I was raised in Nigeria, as I said earlier. We are raised with the mentality that we are the greatest things in the world.
Yeah.
My name is Olamide Waju. That means continuous prosperity. And that's all you need to know. Your father's last name is what you carry, and you need to be responsible for this. That's it. When I came to America was when I knew that everything that has anything to do with black has to be told in a story with white involved. You know what I'm saying? There always has to be the white side of the black story.
Toni Morrison calls it the white gaze. Everything is
Exactly. And it's also,
Yeah.
when I'm speaking to an African American, right, about him, he always brings up them. And I'm like, from my perspective, I feel like saying, you have nothing to do with them, right?
Yeah. You have your own story.
You have your own story, and I think when you acknowledge that you have your own story away from them, is when you actually get so much greater.
Yeah, but you see, I've been fortunate, I can say privileged to deal with some African Americans who don't lay anything.
This is not all. This is
generalization.
Everybody.
Yeah, I know a friend of mine in Dallas, Texas, right? He's an African American. All his family people, they're all graduates, African American. They have their game side.
There's always an exception.
And they will always, and
to
they
the
know what he
general,
tells now. He says that what makes him mad, what makes him angry, is to hear an African American say, they won't let us do this. They won't let us do this.
That kills me so much.
He said, who won't let you do
And that's gonna get censored.
There's something A you said, because if you were born here and you don't have parents that instill those kind of positive, reinforcements, keep hammering on you like your mother was telling you at 2 years old, I think it's very important because you're never gonna get it from the public schools or private schools or Catholic schools, especially because it's run by when I was the majority of the other race. So what do you expect? So the parents is very, very
When I was living in the village, my grandfather pulled me aside. He said, "Do you know what your name? You know what your name that I gave you? Your name is Asopi. Basically, the people behind you are your pride." So these things from 10 years old is what my grandfather's telling me, is what my mom was telling me, is what my other grandfather's telling me all the time.
Let me say something. When we came to America, this year we've been 20 years in America.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's right. 20 years in America.
No,
I've not been to jail. No, I've been to jail though. This year will make me 20 years in America. I've never been to a family offense. Do you know, when we first came to America, a couple of our friends were getting into the 419 friends. You know why I couldn't try for one day?
Because of what they taught you.
When I was leaving Nigeria coming to America, my father, my mom, my father called two of his best friends, Mr. Hambo. And one of my uncles is also his friend, Siwa Musubalu. Then my mom brought two best friends. That was the night before I left America. And then when we got together, my father said, say after me, in front of his friends. He said, you will trust with me inside. He said, in my honor, say after me, as the son of His Royal Highness Ezetiba Nwababa. Say after me, I will say, I promise to do my best and to always keep my hands clean. Wow. That was what my dad told me. I remember in 1990.
You know, those things will
Yeah,
keep you
before-
going.
Yeah, so-
when you get to the point that you're tempted.
Yeah, so every time that people come to me and say, let's do this, I say, wow, that voice will still keep coming back.
And I gotta commend you. You know, I gotta commend all of us, but I gotta commend you because you make movies. I think you also hold a responsibility. You making African movies is one step towards sharing our perspective, right? Because when you look at Americans telling African American stories, you only hear about 12 Years a Slave, The Butler, and everything that has things like that. So I think I commend you. I commend all of us for what we're doing. Do we want to conclude? I think this is kind of like a really broad episode.
Yeah, we can go all night. But yeah, we're not.
Yes.
In conclusion, to my African American brothers and sisters, we are all one. Embrace your roots. You come from Africa. You know, let's be a linguistics school of the African. You know, and let's be my friend from the other states who believes that the white men don't have any power over him. Let's now rewrite what Martin Luther King said. When he said he wants to live in America where his children will be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of their skin.
Right.
Let us rewrite and say now we are living where we judge ourselves by the content of our character, not by the color of our skin. Right. Did you understand what I'm saying?
Preach.
No, for real.
Look at you over here, killing the
But
game.
I'm being real.
Did you just win this episode?
No.
Wow.
What I'm trying to say, let us believe that that day that Martin Luther King was talking about has come. And I was taking by force.
I agree.
That's
Absolutely true.
Yes.
In my conclusion, I don't even know if I can top that or even come close. But as he said, from my perspective, I think the bias of Africans not liking African Americans, I think that is more of the elitist Africans who think they're better than everyone anyway. Right? So if you have that perspective that Africans are not like African Americans, it is not true at all. Right? Not that it's not true, but those who actually share that perspective are arrogant Africans because Africans they're not representing Africans, not at all. You know, we love you, you're our brothers. From my perspective, what I would say, because I think the way I was raised with African morals has helped me grow a lot in the world. You know, I think tell yourself stories about the great things that have happened in your history. You know, even if it starts from your direct grandfather or your father, whatever it is, you are beautiful. It is not this history that they keep 12 years enslaving you.
Your destiny is in your hands.
It's in your hands. Please. Amen.
Well, like you guys just said, it's this is a very important topic, and I think if Obama had this kind of mentality about, like most of his African American brothers, definitely he would never be a president. Definitely would not have a black person like now. I guess it took someone that's not even African American 100% to be the first black person, because it has a lot to do with internally, because like Martin Luther King said, also the mind's a very terrible thing to waste. So everything comes from the inside. We don't hate Americans. We don't hate African Americans. We don't. That's why I have a problem sometimes when you ask African black men, any black man, where you from, and they don't want to associate with Africa. I have a problem with that. I just think we are one. We are the human race.
We are
Let's like race.
Black is beautiful, though. I can't even front. Black is beautiful.
Black is beautiful. Let's be the human race.
we haven't concluded.
Yeah.
So
I have to see the TV before.
no, I just think for Africans, first of all, you like you said, you have a responsibility. You have people who are one with you. You know, anything that you can share, anything that you can give to that person in any race, you give to that person as far as knowledge or whatever. Reminding yourself and every one of us that our story doesn't start with slavery at all. It does not start with slavery at all. And not to be judgmental to African Americans, not to look down on anybody, not to call them any derogatory, because I know y'all do. Some of y'all call them derogatory names or anything like that behind, whatever. Remembering that we are one people, and then also to African Americans to be open to Africans and remember that we are one thing.
Yeah, it's not clowning.
And stop making fun of us.
You know what I'm sorry. One thing I've learned though, in high school, I got absolutely no place from African American girls at all. The older I get though, am I right? Is that why you're like,
It's changed.
He's lying, by the way.
Yeah.
But the older I get, right, the more I think I attract African American women because I guess the way we are raised mature. Does that make sense?
Right.
But I was just using that as a big game. So if you're out there, you know what I'm saying?